With another edition of Let's Be Blunt with Montel, where we talk about everything and anything cannabis to see if we can give you a little extra information to help you make some really good decisions and make good choices as you try to navigate this space. And today we're really happy to be joined by a New York certified medical marijuana physician himself, one who runs an alternative healthcare facility that's committed to the New York State's medical marijuana program. His office mission is to provide its patients with compassionate service designed to alleviate their suffering, and is one of the first in Manhattan to be certified in specialized services of medical marijuana evaluations, medical marijuana recommendations, and also medical marijuana certifications. Specializes in integrative and hands-on approach to treat his patients and education, and can tailor a remedy to each patient to help them with their specific particular needs. He's also the director of the Health Education Learning Program, Inc., and author of the book, Medical Marijuana, Real Life Success Stories. Ladies and gentlemen, so proud, and thank you so much, Dr. Thomas O'Brien, for being here today.
Thank you.
Absolutely,
Pleasure.
sir. No, absolutely. As a doctor, this was not always your field. What did you start out in?
That's correct. Well, my training is in family medicine. So I'm a residency trained family physician, specifically an osteopathic family physician. So I take a holistic approach when I look at my patients. It's not just I'm looking at the cellular level. I'm looking at the patient, the mind, body, spirit, or mind, body, soul. I look at a complete patient.
Okay, so you were doing that before you became and got interested in utilizing cannabis as one of, the weapons in your arsenal to help treat some issues that some patients have. Now, what actually convinced you to look at cannabis and really look at it?
Right. Well, I had a colleague of mine about 4.5, almost 5 years ago, reach out to me, said New York State is going to go certify for medical marijuana. And I, had no idea of medical marijuana. Of course, growing up, about marijuana. So, this is, I'm a lifetime drug-free. I was an athlete growing up. I'm not saying athletes don't do foolish things, but I just was a lifetime drug-free. So I said, let me look at this. And then I realized that this was natural, and my approach to medicine is natural. And I said, you know what, this aligns well with the way I practice. It's, like you said, another arsenal, as being a military background, the terminology we use.
Another tool in that arsenal.
That's correct,
right?
Yes. And I just felt that it really fit my needs, and I can really make a difference in the community. And as you know, and well aware of the abuse of specifics like opioids, that we can make a difference and get individuals off opioids with this natural, and it's natural, not synthetic. So I said, this is for me. I didn't want to come across as like a snake oil salesman, and so I had to do a lot of research. And as I kept reading journals, specifically coming out of Israel, and then Toronto, but West Coast, and every time I read an article, there was new terminology, and it raised more questions, and I had to read and read and read. And I said, this was for me, and I made that decision.
And I think that's one of the things that we ought to just hit on real quick right here as people are listening and tuning in. The information has been here for a long time. I've been involved in cannabis, research and actually, trying to support the fact that, patients should be able to have a private conversation with their doctor,
right,
without anybody interfering in that. Nobody steps in and has a conversation with a doctor when they order chemotherapy for someone and they burn a person from the inside out.
Right.
Nobody opens their mouth and says a word. But, they seem to think that they have the opportunity to step up and get in the middle of a conversation with a doctor and a patient when it comes to using cannabis. And I've been using cannabis now for close to 20 years. I've been an advocate and actually, worked in this state of New York, all over the country, New York, California, Oregon, Arizona, Florida, Connecticut, New Jersey, for 20 years, long before it became vogue.
Right.
And what a lot of people don't understand is that the research has been there for over 20 years. This U.S. government has given itself the patent on CBD. So it's not like this is something that just came about yesterday.
Right.
Why do you think it's so hard to get other doctors to understand? I mean, the person becomes a doctor, they will research information about whatever their specialty is. Why can't we get doctors, medical schools, to stop the stupid and start at least sharing the data that has been peer reviewed for now close to 25 to 30 years.
Right, right. Well, the stigma that's attached to it, you have to look at old school thought process versus new school, younger. The newer generation are more open and they're more appreciative and accepting of new techniques and new procedures. With the older generation, they're very boxed in, set in their ways. With medicine, everything has to be peer reviewed. If it's not peer reviewed, they're not going to lean in that direction. They're going to question it. And when you start to read research on the cannabinoids and cannabis, some of it's not peer reviewed, or majority of it's not peer reviewed. It's individuals who stepped up and decided to write about the success, and they're not going to, how much. Value are they going to put towards that article? And that's how we're trained. Everything has to be peer reviewed.
But there is a lot of peer reviewed articles that have been published, especially out of Israel, with research that's been funded by the United States government. And I think a lot of other people at home need to also understand that we've been researching at the University of Mississippi, though albeit researching probably some of the worst cannabis ever grown by man at the University of Mississippi for now well over 35 years. And this data has been published, has been put out, has been discussed, talked about, and it's almost like it's just ignored.
Right, right. It's political as well. Who's going to control the funds in what direction? Lobbyists. Also, with the hospitals, they're federally qualified health centers, so they're not going to jeopardize the federal funds by prescribing something that is not certified by the government. So that's why you don't see hospitals get involved. And then you have the personal choices of the physicians. Do they believe it or not? It's just like me being an osteopath. If you go back 40, 50 years ago, we were called quacks. We were the original quacks before chiropractors. Chiropractors came from us. The founding fathers studied under our founding father. So it took time for the allopathic medical societies to finally accept us and understand that we have the same exact training. So it takes time. Part of that is the physicians were being treated by osteopaths and then training with them and seeing how well we did. And then they finally accepted us. I mean, we had to open up our own hospitals. So this is going to go through the same thing, same process with medical marijuana.
And as you've seen now, you've done the research and you're actually certified here in the state of New York to actually dispense, to recommend, to discuss with your patients medical marijuana, or I should say medical cannabis. I'll drop the term marijuana.
Right, I do the same.
But even in the state right now, I've had discussions with several doctors in this state who will go, put their hand up by their mouth and say, well, I agree, but we can't do anything with that here in this hospital. When can we get beyond the stupidity of the stigma?
Right. Well, that's the federal government. So we need to really lobby for the federal government to change the way and open this up so it's federalized. And then the insurance companies will fall suit and they'll be able to cover the expense of the cannabis is pretty expensive, especially here in New York City compared to like West Coast. It's about 2 to 3 times more expensive here in New York City, or New York State, I should say, in general, than like California.
And I think you're going to see that change here very, very quickly as New Jersey continues to expand its medical marijuana program and makes it more available to people in the state of New Jersey. You're going to see people from New York just going across go through the tunnel and picking up this. So as soon as New York starts losing a little revenue, they're going to get a grip and understand that maybe we ought to get back to some reality, I think, here.
Right.
Now, as you talk to patients, though, not only is there a stigma with doctors and a hesitancy with doctors, but there is a generational hesitancy among some patients because they've been beaten over the head, let's say, for most of their life talking about, the ills and the bad side of cannabis, rather than wanting to accept the fact that there's new information.
Right. Well, my job is to educate. I'm an educator first, before a physician. We always say you're a detective, educator, then physician. You must detect, educate, then treat. A lot of patients, they want a cure. We say there's no cures in medicine. We say there's treatments. Cures means they'll never come back, which we know pathology, medical conditions return. So what I do is I educate my patients or the community, because I do give presentations. I said, well, there is a difference between recreational versus medicinal. And then I start to explain the difference, especially the percentage of THC compared from one to the other. And I always reference the character Spicoli of Fast Times at Ridgemont High. I said, that would be recreational, where your THC could be anywhere from 60 to 91%. And
By volume.
yeah, it's very high. With medicinal, we're about 25%. And so my function and what my mission is to make you comfortable and functional so you can have quality of life. And once they start to understand, and I said there is a difference, and I show and I give them paperwork, and I start to treat them. I come back a month later, because I do a month follow-up, and they just give me the thumbs up. I said I should have started this a long time ago.
Sure.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are starting to understand it. I mean, again, we do research on medicines. I always think back, and I know it seems crazy to liken cannabis in a way to the thimerosal, or not thimerosal, but thalidomide. If you remember, there was a time in this country when doctors prescribed thalidomide for women for postpartum and for partum issues or pregnancy issues, and caused probably the most horrific birth defects that the world has ever seen. Right. Now, 20 years later, we have taken another look at that same drug and recognize that that drug has some very specific benefits for multiple diseases that don't cause birth defect and aren't used for women who are pregnant. And that's a viable treatment alternative for several different illnesses now.
Right.
So, maybe we should stop for a second and think, how do we translate that same information over to the masses to make them understand that maybe something that we vilified yesterday, we now found out through science and research, there's some benefits to.
Right. Well, I would say education, and that's really the government. Like you and I, our pockets are only so deep, and we can go out and do podcasts or TV shows. But the government, my issue is, and what I find that no one in New York State from the government side is educating our community that medical marijuana, medical cannabis is available.
Don't blame just New York. I'm going to tell you that I've been involved, again, 20 years of advocacy across this country, and we get to a point now where we have cannabis availability, but the industry itself is doing itself a disservice by not stepping up to the plate and trying to educate as much as they possibly can. Right. We have now, you can go and depending on the state you go to, you can walk into dispensaries where, with my experience, I have a hard time navigating the 7,000 different options that are there before me with pretty packaging and those kinds of things. You don't have the slightest idea what's in what you're actually trying to purchase. And that's really what drove me back to get back into the industry and actually become a formulator myself, because I got sick and tired of going into places trying to find something that would affect the symptoms of my illness and seeing that it was so adulterated with so much garbage that I decided, you know what, if you can't, what is that old saying, if you can't find somebody to do something right, then do it yourself. So I started doing it myself. And then once I've figured out that I have something that literally is giving me benefit from my illness, which is MS, and also suffered a stroke, but something that was benefiting me, why should I not make that available to other people?
Right.
And unfortunately, though we started doing that, I have literally been on this mission to try to see if I can start to educate. But I wonder, why is not the medical community really demanding more CMEs and more discussions with doctors? I'm putting on lectures almost every day of the week where doctors can come out and patients can come out and sit in the same room and learn.
Right.
Why is there hesitancy now?
It's the medical societies. We have to, again, who's running the medical societies? Sure. Is it the old school, right, the old generation, the old guard versus the new guard?
I had a doctor who's one of the top neurological brain doctors. This person studies the brain I find it just crazy. And he looked at me one day and he said, Montel, I'm going to tell you something. You know, it is a fact that the medical community is probably the worst when it comes to anything transformative. Anything transformative in medicine is met with the most vehement and adamant opposition rather than open arms and accepting.
Right, exactly. Well, medicine in America is conservative to begin with, so we're very slow at bringing on new concepts. In New York, it's even more conservative. We're ultra conservative. We don't experiment on our own people. So what we do is we look at other countries and we see what they're doing. When we see something positive, and then we'll start to look at it, and then eventually we study it. So that's part of it. It's just the way, the nature of how medicine evolved. Especially in America, we don't really experiment. And that's why a lot of individuals who have some sort of pathology, they'll leave and go to a different country for experimental procedures. We can easily do those procedures here in America, but because of medical
society.
Absolutely. You can sign paperwork and release forms, but still the physicians could be liable. It's just like with me. When I first got certified, I'm exposed. In New York State, they said they're not going to go after the physicians, but my license still. Let's say the federal government decides, you know what, we're going to crack down on this.
Sure.
I'm exposed, and I was willing to take the risk. But when you get to certain, experimental procedures, you lose your livelihood. And, this is not a 4-year. This is, for me, it was 16 years before I can go out and start treating patients. So it's almost 2 decades, to take care of people. I'm doing this almost 30 years now. So.
Sure. And you're treating now, well, you have a practice of about 1,100 patients?
Yeah, I certified probably just a little bit more than 1,100 patients. I thought I would have a lot more. New York City has anywhere from 8 to 12 million people in the city. It's just getting the knowledge out there. People still don't know that this is available. And you figure in today's day with all the social media, people don't know. And if they do know,
I think some people they're reticent because their name has to go on somebody's list.
Yes.
And therefore they're afraid that somebody's going to come knocking on their door and questioning them. So it makes it tough for people who are trying to find just basic relief.
Right. Absolutely. I have majority of when I first opened up my practice, it was pretty much full spectrum, almost all the qualifying conditions. There's just one condition, Huntington careers. I don't have that. But then as my practice evolved over the years, I'm 4.5, almost 4 3/4 years open, I became pretty much pain management. And the first thing the patients say is, I want to get off the narcotics.
Right.
They're making me sick. I said, I know they're making you sick. They're changing the biochemistry in your brain. And I start to educate them on that. And shortly, I have them off the narcotics. But still getting them in the door and educating them, that's the biggest barrier I see. And I find that just getting patients in and getting the knowledge out there, you need a huge budget, which... I'm a little guy. I'm a solo guy.
The research has identified, we know now that, cannabis, and because of the research that has been done, and Dr. Meshulam out of Israel identifying the endocannabinoid system, where most people don't understand that we have a system in our body. We make endocannabinoids ourselves without even consuming cannabis. Right. And although they're not the exact same molecule, they're antagonized by, our system's antagonized by the, input of plant-based cannabinoids that actually stimulate receptors in our brain and in our nervous system that respond. And that respond for a myriad of different illnesses. In your book, your most recent book that you have out right now is you talk about everything from, Parkinson's disease, diabetes, multiple sclerosis, which I have, breast cancer, severe back pain, irritable bowel syndrome, chronic back pain, post-traumatic stress syndrome. And, these are things, if you go back even 15 years ago, in Israel, they were treating some of their soldiers, allowing soldiers, people on active duty in their military, to treat their PTSD with, cannabinoids. And so, it's taken a long time for America to catch up, but at least we're in the right direction now, don't you think?
Yeah. It's just very slow. Like I said, new concepts are very slow, and then they're going to pick up the momentum. So, I've been called like the pioneer here in New York. So it's just trying to hold on to keep this going, because it's difficult to maintain a business
Sure.
and trying to keep this going. And I'm just hoping that as more people learn about this, I have something to offer, and I can continue making a difference.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about you so people can understand what you have to offer. Your approach to medicine, and you said it earlier, but let's go back up a little bit, is an integrative approach. Why don't you explain to people what that means so they understand the difference?
Right. Again, I have formal training in family medicine. I'm an osteopathic physician, so I also manipulate. I have a master's in clinical nutrition. So what I do is I take an integrative approach, mind, body, spirit, mind, body, soul. So like look, listen, and feel. I look at the patient. I listen to the patient. I also feel the patient physically and emotionally. That's a huge component that is missing today, especially today. It's all about volume. So when I'm speaking to the individual, I am making eye contact with them instead of looking at a screen and putting in data into this computer. I want the patient to see my eyes, and I want to see them. I am reading them. So I take a holistic approach. I'm not treating just a cell. I'm treating the individual, and I'm talking to them. I had several in my book, and this is not one time, several times. I had men have issues. They were just newly diagnosed with cancer. And so you could see them breaking down, and I just say, hey, listen, stand up. And so they stand up and say, give me a hug. And they look at me and say, yeah, give me a hug. And I give them, I said, come on, give me a real hug. And I said, listen, I'm here for you. We're going to do this together.
Sure.
You need that. And the guy turns around, and a lot of times they'll say, thanks, doc, I really need it. I said, listen, anytime you need a hug, you need to talk, give me a call. You can email me. I'm here 24 hours.
24/7.
Yep. And that's that approach that I appreciate, and I want to offer to my patients.
And that allows you to then tailor their cannabis treatment specifically for the individual.
That's
right?
correct. Yes.
Right?
Yes. In New York State, we have 3 different ratios. I call them categories to keep it really, really simple. We have a high CBD, low THC, THC, CBD are equal ratios. Then we have the high THC, low CBD ratio. And based on the medical condition or their symptoms that they would like me to address, together we make a decision. It's not I am telling the patient. Together as a team, we make a decision. And then what I do is I give them the necessary tools for them to manage their care, not me. When I'm doing family medicine, hypertension, diabetes, I'm telling the patient, you have to take this pill once a day, twice a day. And I'm saying, it's a little bit different approach. With the medical cannabis, I am saying you're in control. If you have a little pain, then only take a little. If you have moderate amount of pain, you take a little bit more. If you're in severe pain, then you can take this amount. So I basically teach them a sliding scale of how to use the cannabinoids. And they look at me and like, really? I said, yeah, you're in control. And just trust me, start low, go slow. That's what we say in medicine. If you need the maximum to get the maximum, something's wrong.
Allows the patient to titrate themselves. So I may wake up some mornings where I can't put my feet on the floor. And for me, early on when I started using cannabis, CBD was, what helped me a little bit more with my inflammation and a little bit more with my pain. But now over time, I noticed that there's sometimes when I need a big gun, man.
Right.
Get up in the morning. So I'd rather go 95.5. And then as I go through the day, I can change the ratio that I need to suit whatever I'm getting ready to face.
Right.
And that allows, again, putting the control in the patient's hand.
That's correct. Yes. Yeah, we have a couple of companies offer that, something very similar to what you were saying. And I tell my patients, well, this is a beginner. You can start with the lower ratio and then advance based on your needs. Like if you have breakthrough pain, I say, well, some of my patients, they have, in one of my books, I discuss an individual who was on chronic pain and multiple or polysubstance abuse. And I said that you're going to use a sliding scale. And for your baseline pain, use this ratio. When you have breakthrough pain, then we can slide up and use the stronger version. And we had some good success with that. I think the cost, it's the cost that's the biggest factor that we see.
Right. And, it's interesting. I've often said this, and I do not understand. It's like when you look at the way pharmaceutical companies have done this in the past, and I get having to, try to reabsorb, the amount of money we spent on research. So that's the reason why a lot of times, a lot of the medications that we have such a high sticker price. But excuse me, this is a weed. Stop. I mean, I'm trying to smack this industry a little bit because, I mean, we should understand, I get it. We do have to buy very expensive equipment for extraction, and we have to buy very expensive equipment to help us formulate. But, once that initial outlay is done, you're processing a weed. And I also am a person who's a little bit, I, I don't say I take shots at the industry, but we spend a lot of time trimming and cutting away the most important part of the plant just to make it look pretty in these little round nugs that go in these little bottles so that somebody can come up and look at it and go, oh, nice. Stop. This is stupid. This plant, this is a plant that could grow on its own, honestly, if we just processed the plant.
Right.
Yes. And so, I mean, with your book that you wrote, and the book is called Medical Marijuana, Real Life Success Stories by Dr. Thomas O'Brien. I think you should go out and get a copy. And do you have a website that people can reach out to you on?
Yes, it's www.doctommy.com.
DocTommy.com. So I want people to go up on that website. But in your book, you talk about, you've used examples, anecdotal examples of patients that have come to you.
Yes.
And you walk them through the process. Why don't you give us a couple of examples of some of the and various modalities of patients? That
Sure. I think in this book, the most emotional is Dying with Dignity.
Sure.
This was a fellow 9/11 provider, okay, went out and for rescue missions, developed cancer. It was under standard treatments, the whole protocol. Came to me for treatment. We started treating. The cancer seemed to was in remission, was doing well. I made him very comfortable. Good results. About 2 years later, the cancer came back. Much more aggressive, much more aggressive. Spread. It spread throughout other organs. And came back to me and basically said, I go by Tommy, Dr. Tommy,
Sure.
whatever you feel comfortable with. I'm not really formal. I know my doc. You want to call me Dr. O, Tommy, it's fine. So he says, Tommy, I said, he goes, things have changed. I said, well, what's wrong? And he says, this is not good. I don't have much longer. I go, well, what's happening? And he said that the cancer came back and spread. It's in multiple organs now, and I want to go out on my terms. I said, okay. So I put him on palliative care. I said,
Sure.
you ready for this? And he says, yes. I said, okay, this is what we're going to do. And I explained the sequence and how we're going to titrate up, and went out on his terms. And so that, and I discuss it. So I'm kind of like making it a synopsis, really brief. But if you read the chapter, and you can get a sense of doing a walkthrough, and that's why the book was written, so you can actually feel emotionally as you're reading the sentences and the paragraphs of the walkthrough and how we together make a decision and what would be the appropriate approach. And if I need to make tweaks and modify, we do it. And you see it in the book.
That's very interesting. It's one of the things that I'm so shocked here in the United States that we do what we do. And most people don't know that about 65% of all expenses for medical care in this country literally are focused on the last 2 weeks of life.
Yes.
People don't understand that. They don't know that. We literally spend more money trying to get an extra minute,
Right.
an extra hour,
Yeah.
an extra day, an extra week, an extra month. And I'm not. Look, I unfortunately have lived a life where I have faced my own mortality 3 times, looked it right in the face, right in the eye, and at the end of the day, each time that happened. Yes, I'm glad that, I'm still here, but at the same time, for me, it's something, catastrophic is about to happen. I mean, I should be satisfied that I've lived, the life I've lived. And I should be satisfied and happy with the fact that, I get to go out on my own terms. And I should be happy that I'm not leaving my family destitute, trying to get me an extra hour.
Right.
And we don't discuss that. And it's so good that you discuss that in your book and give people the option to think that through.
Right. Well, it's as a family physician, I'm on the other end, trying to give you life and to be on the other end of the spectrum where we're at the very end. And I was willing to take that challenge, and because emotionally, as the person's telling you this, and I'm hearing what the person's saying, I know what Dr. Tommy wants. And then there's Tommy, the medical cannabis Tommy. And I'm saying, ooh, boy, okay, this conflicts with my training, and I have to say what's best for the patient now. And it's just like with my grandma when she passed away, the family came to me and said I had to make the decision. There was grandson Tommy, and then there was the physician Tommy. And the grandson says, I want my grandma here. And then the physician says, okay, the reality is grandma's not going to be here, and I want her to pass with ease
and dignity.
That's right. And so basically, I gave the order. Okay, let's say let's start a morphine drip. This is it, and get the whole family here and say your goodbyes, and say I love you, and we all had to do that. The family showed up, and I gave the order, and it's hard. It's hard.
Sure. Yeah.
Someone has to make that decision, and so I made that decision. I'm willing to make that decision. It's tough. It's really tough. You have to be spiritual, and you have to love people.
Right. And that's, I can look at the emotion in your face when we were speaking, but it's an emotion that you don't see in a lot of doctors these days. And, I think it's tough how do you teach that?
Well, I think it's your upbringing. I was very, I'm blessed. I have, mom and dad. I'm Irish and Italian, so I'm a McGinney. So, both sides are very compassionate people. If you came to our house for a holiday, everyone's yelling, but we're really having a conversation. Right. It's funny. It just gets higher and higher because everyone's so passionate. Sure. And everyone wants to share the stage. And being brought up and educated. My parents were educators, so my father taught at Nassau Community College for 52 years. My mom taught for 35 years in Suffolk County and at the public school level. So that education and that holistic approach of saying, listen, you're not going to educate one specific group of people. It's everyone. We're bringing everyone together. Here's a little quick fun fact there. My father helped establish the Afro-American Studies program at Nassau Community College in the early 1970s. In my book, I talk about, I call him, he's another father of mine, and that was Professor Jenkins, and he was the administrator. And what we had, the race riots in the early 70s, and they said, we got to do something right now. And he says, let's get this. They didn't have a budget for it, so they put this program together because my father was assistant president and, dean and so forth. He says, let's put this together. It's for all of us, and that's our mission. We're educators. We educate all, not one group. It's all of us together. So I brought up in my house, anyone can come over. I mean, because my crew is a mixed, it's a blend. It's not one, it's a blend. And I grew up in Freeport on Long Island, so that's a mixed community. And my doors were open, so I'd come home late after playing sports, and my friends are hanging out. Mom being Italian, she's always cooking. Say, no, you can't leave the house. Did you eat? If you didn't eat, you have to. You can't leave till you eat. So that was that community, and I was raised in that. And I said, oh, this is an extension of who I am, my family, and that's how I practice. Everyone gets treated equally. Not one. I don't care if you make $1 million a year, if you don't have a penny in your pocket. I'm treating you exactly the same. I'm going to do whatever I can to get you the best care. And I got success. I'm doing this, like I said, almost 3 decades. I'm having fun. I mean, it's tough. It's changed in 30 years, the medicine, trying to practice. But I'm doing the best I can and making a difference. I have fun doing it.
And you know that there are people who are listening, tuned in right now, especially even in New York and in Manhattan, who could use the help when it comes to cannabis, but they're just afraid. What would you say to them right now? Get them to understand that, there's information out here that could help you So why not come in and ask the question?
Right, right. The big thing is this is nothing new. This has been around since the 1950s.
Right. Well,
Okay?
cannabis has been around
Well,
since
yeah,
5,000 years, written about by, in cornucopia of Chinese medicine, 3,000 years
right.
BC.
Right, right. Well, I always say the grandfather of medical cannabis over in Israel. So the studies and the story about going to the police station and getting the cannabis and experimenting with it in the labs. But this is nothing new. This has been around, like you said, 27,000 years. It's been around a long time. The key is to be educated and understand it's not street.
Right.
It's medicinal. It's quality. There's quality assurance, quality controls. You're getting specific ratios. The ratios are designed for specific function within the body. And if you go to someone who really understands these ratios and how to treat it, come on in. Especially with me, I'm doing this 5 years. I did a lot of reading just to go over so you have an understanding. In order to prescribe medical cannabis, you have to take a course. It's a 4.5-hour course, and then you take the exam. Well, in addition, I didn't feel comfortable that I didn't have enough information. I didn't feel qualified after that 4.5 course. I did an additional 12 hours reading because every time I read something about it, there was a new word, a new terminology,
Sure.
and then that was a question. I said, "Whoa, what does this mean?" I kept reading. After about 16 total hours, that's when I felt comfortable. Said, "I understand this. I'm ready to take care of patients." Up until that point, I just didn't feel comfortable, and we're talking, the January 2015. That's how long I've been practicing. So I'm approaching 5 years. This January will be 5 years.
Okay, make sure you know that's Dr. Thomas O'Brien, Dr. Tommy. and again, the book that's out right now is called Medical Marijuana, Real Life Success Stories. I suggest you go out and get a copy of it, and you can reach him and find him on www.drtommy.com. And, I think in the last week or two, we've now seen that there's some unscrupulous players in this industry, and we know that. You have medical marijuana that is being sold at licensed dispensaries that are certified by state, and then you have people in the street who are still doing black market, exploitation
Right.
of people. And now we've got some products in the marketplace that are extremely deleterious to your health. Some of them are extremely deleterious. How do you think we get beyond this? And again, it's through education, but
Right.
what do we have to do to tell people that, no, you don't have to worry about every product out there,
Right.
but just stop buying stuff from, Vinny down the corner, right?
Yeah. Well, the first is you have to break down that negative stigma. Let's turn on a positive light. Let's educate community. And we need to get the government more involved.
Yes.
Let's bring the cost down. Let's open up more dispensaries, make sure there's quality assurance, and we really need a governing body to oversee this. That was my biggest complaint about CBD. I love CBD because of the receptors. You're not going to get high from the CBD. CB2 receptors are not in the central nervous system.
Right.
They're found in other organs. And they do very well. It makes you very, very focused. Excellent. I love it. So we really need a governing body to oversee this so we know that we're getting what you're paying for. If it's on that label saying it's 5,000 milligrams of CBD, that it's 5,000.
It better be.
That's right. You know what I mean? Talking about an entire bottle. That would probably be about 50, a little bit less than 50 milligrams per ml.
Sure.
I've seen, and read horror stories where people purchased and they brought them to the lab and there was no CBD in it.
Absolutely.
So that's not right. You're stealing now. So if we have a governing body, so we would have to some sort of governing body oversee this and regulate to make sure and protect, like a consumer protection.
Sure.
And that will start to change things.
And I think one of the things that really has to step up is that the industry has to start policing itself. I mean, you take a look at, for 30 years, we had the hyperbaric community that really had no oversight. They actually police themselves.
Right.
Because, oxygen is a medicine and should be treated that way. And, you had an industry that stopped and said, you know what, we got to take a look at the bad players that are out here, the people that are hurting people who are divers, hurting people who are using it for, medicinal purposes, and call them out. And that's what this industry needs to start doing. And I think, the first day that we step up to the plate and at least acknowledge that we need the help and we want to be a participant in policing, I think things will change.
Right.
Dr. Tommy, I got to wish you really good luck, sir, and
Thank you.
hopefully, your practice will blossom. 1,100 is a small number in a city with 11 million people.
I know.
mean,
I know. That's. I would have thought that I would have had that my first year.
right. No ifs, ands, or buts. Again,
I know.
I want to make sure if you're listening out there, you're listening to Let's Be Blunt with Montel, and go up on the website www.doctommy.com. Get some more information. Thank you so much, sir, for being with us today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. You have a great day, man.
Okay.